This is Carrie Corbet-Owen from Body-Wise Perfect Size, talking to Dr. Traci Mann from the Eating Lab. Traci, tell me about your own personal story and how you got interested in weight.
I did one diet once, second year of high school. It lasted about 3 weeks. It was not fun. I hated it. It was shocking to me why anyone would do it. My parents were constant dieters, on again, off again, losing, regaining. It all looked just nuts to me. So it never fully got into my head that it was a good thing to do. I feel like I got a slightly weird view of dieting from that experience. But the thing that started me doing research on it was the first time I read an article about obesity in grad school. And it just floored me because everything that scientific paper showed to be true was the opposite of everything I'd always heard. What was that paper? I believe that paper was the one that looked at sort of food diaries, how much people ate over the course of 2 weeks, and they compared how much fat people ate versus thin people. Are we allowed to use the word fat? I never know. It's just a word, not a judgment. Nice description. What those studies showed is that there wasn't a difference in the amount of calories over 2 weeks eaten by thin or fat people. And, that just floored me. It's like, what? But all I ever hear is that fat people are overeating, extraordinarily, and thin people are resisting everything. Not true. Not true. That's not how it is. And then I started learning about the genetics of weight. Weight is 70% genetically determined. There's only a little wiggle room in there. That fascinated me. All those things made me quite interested in it.
Traci, you've written a fantastic book, Secrets from the Eating Lab. Why did you think it was necessary to write this book?
I needed to write this book because I got so sick of people blaming dieters when they lose weight and regain it. People constantly say they have no self-control, they're weak, they just didn't want it enough, all kinds of things like that. And I just couldn't take it anymore. So I wanted to write this book so that I could clarify why people regain weight after dieting and then what they can do instead to be healthy.
What is it that you think is wrong? What is it that you think is wrong?
People don't necessarily know that the large majority of people who lose weight on diets regain it, plus even extra weight. So if you look at sort of all the studies of diets, all the long-term randomized controlled trials of diets, so the gold standard studies of diets, and if you look at the ones that follow dieters for at least 2 years, what you find is that the average amount of weight regain is all but 2 pounds. I've also heard, and this number isn't my own, but it seems fairly convincing, I've heard that about only 5% of dieters keep off the weight that they took off in the long run. The majority of people gain it back. Are we really to believe that all those people are weak? I mean, it doesn't even make sense. I'm a social psychologist, and in social psychology, when we see a large majority of people behaving all the same way, we know it's not about the person. We know it's about something bigger than the person, something about the environment, something physical, whatever. It's not the person's own will. And that's definitely the case with dieting. So when it comes to dieting, and I think this is the biggest misconception, willpower is not your friend, and willpower is not what separates the thin from the fat. Willpower, it's just basically, if willpower is going to work for you, it has to be 100% perfect. And nobody's 100% perfect. Here's why I say that. Okay, just kind of picture this situation. We've all been in some version of this situation. You are in a meeting and somebody comes in, some lovely colleague comes in with a box of donuts. And that's great and that's awesome of them. But suppose you're trying to resist that donut. Okay, to resist it, you have to resist it repeatedly. Okay, this is not just one act of self-control, right? You resist it when they come in, great. But that box is still sitting there and you're in that meeting for an hour. Every time you kind of glance over to wherever that box is, you have to resist it again. Another act of self-control. So if you resist it 19 times, but then on the 20th time you have a moment of weakness and you eat it, you don't get credit for those 19 impressive acts of self-control, right? You're just the same as someone who only resisted it twice. Okay, so with eating, willpower does not really work because prior successes at willpower get sort of wiped away, get kind of erased by a failure at willpower. Does that make sense? So like with other activities, a failure of self-control doesn't erase all the previous stuff. So studying for a test is a good example of self-control. You have to focus on it. You can't like slack off and start, sending email. You have to focus on it. If you have a moment of weakness and you suddenly start looking at your email and you do that for like 5 minutes, yeah, you lose 5 minutes of studying, but that doesn't erase all the studying that came before. Okay, so with eating, little tiny failures of self-control erase previous successes. And because of that, and this is maybe the technical part, but because of that, it basically erases the differences between people. And the only distinctions in terms of how good they are at self-control, it just doesn't matter. And the only thing that matters are the total extremes of the scale, which, most people aren't.
So are there people with great control?
Whenever I tell people that I study self-control of eating or willpower, they always tell me that they have terrible willpower. They always say, oh my gosh, tell me your secrets. What are your secrets? I need help with that. And they all say it as if it's their own sort of unique situation, when really it's everybody. I've never encountered in all these years, I've been doing this for 20 years, I've never had anybody say to me, my willpower is great, you should study me. Nobody's ever done that. So everybody thinks their willpower is bad because nobody's is perfect. And unless it's perfect, it is going to feel like it's bad. And negative looms larger than positive. You see that all through psychology. I see that. You see that in all kinds of things that have nothing to do with weight. So back to willpower. So the other reason I think that people think they have bad willpower is because they go on diets and regain the weight. So I've already mentioned that most people regain the weight. Now, the reason people regain the weight is not because of their bad willpower. Okay, we all have bad willpower. We're even. There's no differences there. The reason people regain weight after dieting is because when you diet, when you restrict the amount of food you're eating, you put your body into a state of deprivation. And our body has evolved to respond a certain way to that state of deprivation. And all of those things it does makes it way too easy to regain weight and way too hard to keep it off. So 3 kinds of things your body does in response to deprivation. One of them, one kind of change that happens is hormone changes. So the levels of different hormones change as they're flowing through your body. So hormones that help you feel full, those levels of those go down. But hormones that keep you feeling hungry, the level of those go up. So after dieting, you're more likely to feel hungry, even if you eat the same stuff that didn't leave you feeling hungry before. Okay, that is harsh. That is not fair. So that's hormone type changes. Metabolic changes, I think people sort of have a sense of this already, but after dieting, your metabolism changes. Your body gets really good at running itself on fewer calories than normal. That leaves more left over to store as fat. And what that means is you can eat the same number of calories, but instead of losing weight, now you're staying same. You can be eating the same amount of calories that you were eating while losing weight, but now you don't lose weight anymore. You stay the same or you regain. And yet people blame this all the time on their own willpower. It's not. It's the hormones, it's the metabolism, and there's also neurological changes, brain changes. When your body senses deprivation, all these different neurological changes happen. And just to name a couple, attention changes. So your brain becomes highly attuned to food. It's more likely to notice food that's around you. When it does notice food, it sort of locks onto it. It's hard to get your mind off of food. You get preoccupied with thoughts of food. And every dieter will tell you that happens. But not only that, the reward response changes. So you get a bigger hit of reward when you eat food or when you look at food even. So food is more rewarding that makes it much harder to resist. Okay, so you put all these things together, and dieters are in quite a difficult battle.
For more of my interview with Dr. Traci Mann, visit www.bodywiseperfectsize.com.